They say silence speaks louder than words, but what happens when your silence becomes the very weapon that changes everything? Picture this, it's your birthday, the one day that's supposed to be all about you, and the person who promised to be by your side chooses to spend it with their ex instead. Most people would scream, cry, demand explanation. But what if I told you that doing absolutely nothing, saying absolutely nothing, could be the most powerful move you ever make? Stay with me because this story is going to show you exactly how one woman's silent exit became the statement that shook an entire relationship to its core. What's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is where we dive deep into real relationship stories that make you think, feel, and sometimes question everything you thought you knew about love and self-respect. Today's story is incredibly powerful because it's not about revenge. It's not about drama. It's about something far more profound, the moment when you finally choose yourself. And trust me, by the end of this video, you're going to understand why sometimes the most devastating thing you can do is simply walk away without a single word. But before we get into this jaw-dropping story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on these real-life lessons. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had to walk away from someone who didn't value you? Now, let's get into it. Sarah had been with Marcus for 3 years. 3 whole years of building a life together, of inside jokes, of shared dreams about the future. They weren't perfect, no couple is, but she thought they had something real, something worth fighting for. She'd been looking forward to her 28th birthday for weeks. Not because she cared about getting older or wanted some elaborate celebration, but because Marcus had promised her something special. He'd been dropping hints for a month, telling her to keep the weekend free, that he had something planned that would blow her mind. She let herself get excited. She let herself believe that this year would be different from the last one when he'd been so busy with work that they barely celebrated at all. She should have known better. The warning signs were there if she'd been willing to see them. 3 weeks before her birthday, Marcus started getting distant. Not in an obvious way, but in those subtle shifts that you feel in your gut before your brain catches up. He was on his phone more. He was distracted during conversations, giving her those vacant smiles that said his mind was somewhere else entirely. When she'd bring up her birthday, he'd get this weird look on his face, somewhere between guilt and irritation, before quickly changing the subject. Sarah told herself she was being paranoid. After 3 years, you learn to give your partner the benefit of the doubt, right? You learn to trust that the foundation you've built is solid enough to withstand a few cracks. Then came the Thursday before her birthday weekend. Marcus came home from work looking like a man about to deliver bad news. Sarah knew that look. She'd seen it before when he had to cancel plans or when he'd forgotten something important. She braced herself, already feeling the disappointment settling in her chest like a stone. He sat down across from her at their small kitchen table, couldn't quite meet her eyes, and said the words that would change everything. His ex-girlfriend Emma was going through a crisis. A real crisis, he emphasized, as if that made it better. She'd lost her job, her apartment lease was up, and she was having some kind of emotional breakdown. Emma had reached out to him because apparently he was the only person she could talk to. And here's the kicker, she needed him this weekend. This specific weekend. Sarah's birthday weekend. Sarah sat there in stunned silence as Marcus explained, his words coming out in a rush like he'd rehearsed this speech. He said Emma had no one else. He said it would just be a few hours on Saturday, that he'd help her sort through some things and make sure she was okay. He promised he'd make Sarah's birthday up to her, that they'd celebrate next weekend instead, that it would be even better. He looked at her with those puppy dog eyes that had worked on her 100 times before and waited for her to understand, to be the cool girlfriend who didn't make a fuss. And here's where most people would expect the explosion, the tears, the accusations, the demands to choose between them. But Sarah didn't do any of that. She looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and in that moment something inside her just clicked into place. It was like watching a puzzle finally reveal its true picture, and that picture was ugly. This wasn't about Emma's crisis. This was about Marcus showing her exactly where she ranked in his life, and it wasn't first place. It wasn't even second. She was the understanding girlfriend, the one who would always be there, always be flexible, always put his needs before her own. And he'd taken that for granted for so long that he actually believed she'd be okay with this. Sarah felt something shift in her chest, something fundamental. It was the death of hope, maybe, or the birth of clarity. Sometimes they're the same thing. She simply nodded, said, "Okay." Marcus looked almost shocked by how easy it was, relief flooding his face. He reached across the table to squeeze her hand, thanking her for being so understanding, for being so mature about this. He promised again that next weekend would be special, that he'd make it up to her. Sarah smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, "Sure, whatever works." She watched him relax, watched him feel good about himself for successfully navigating this awkward conversation. He had no idea that he'd just signed the death certificate for their relationship. That night, while Marcus slept soundly beside her, probably relieved that his guilt could take a break, Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was calculating. Friday came, and Sarah played her part perfectly. She went to work, came home, acted completely normal. Marcus was extra attentive, probably trying to assuage his guilt, asking what she wanted for dinner, suggesting they watch her favorite show. She went along with it all, matching his energy, giving nothing away. Inside, she was already gone. Saturday morning arrived, her actual birthday. Marcus woke up early, kissed her forehead, and told her he'd be back by early afternoon. They'd do something nice for dinner, he said. Just the two of them. Sarah watched him get ready with this careful attention, noticing things she'd stopped seeing over the years. The way he checked his appearance 3 times in the mirror. The way he put on cologne. Not the everyday stuff, but the good cologne. The one he saved for special occasions. The way his fingers trembled slightly with what might have been nervousness or might have been excitement. After he left, Sarah got up and started packing. Not everything, not in a way that would be immediately obvious, but the important things. Her documents, her jewelry, the photos that mattered to her, the books that had been hers before they became theirs. She worked methodically, without emotion, like she was simply completing a task. She called her best friend Jessica, who'd been telling her for months that Marcus didn't deserve her. Jessica answered on the first ring, and when Sarah told her what was happening, there was a long pause before Jessica said the 3 words Sarah needed to hear: "I'm coming over." Within an hour, Jessica arrived with her car and an expression that was equal parts fury and pride. She looked at Sarah, at the boxes packed neatly by the door, and just nodded. They didn't need a long conversation. Jessica understood. Some decisions don't need to be explained or justified. They just need to be executed. They loaded up Jessica's car with 3 years of Sarah's life condensed into boxes and bags. It took 2 trips to move everything to the storage unit Sarah had rented that morning. Then they went to Jessica's apartment, where Sarah would stay until she figured out her next move. She texted Marcus once, just 7 words, "Staying at Jess's tonight." Have fun. Short, simple, giving nothing away. Marcus responded with a thumbs up emoji and a promise to call her later. He didn't call. Sarah knew he wouldn't. Sunday morning, Sarah's phone started buzzing. Marcus calling. She let it go to voicemail. He called again. Again. By the 5th call, Jessica grabbed the phone and turned it off. They spent the day doing mundane things, getting brunch, walking through the park, buying Sarah some basics since most of her stuff was in storage. To anyone watching, they were just 2 friends having a normal Sunday. But Sarah was rebuilding herself from the inside out, one small decision at a time. Monday evening, Sarah finally turned her phone back on. 43 missed calls, 27 text messages. The progression of Marcus's messages told a story all on their own. They started casual, asking where she was, saying he wanted to talk about how Saturday went. Then they got concerned, asking if she was okay, if something was wrong. Then they got frustrated, demanding to know why she was ignoring him. Finally, they got desperate, pleading with her to just respond, to let him know she was alive. Sarah read through all of them with a strange detachment, like she was reading about someone else's life. She responded with one message: "Meeting Tuesday. We need to talk about living arrangements." The use of the word arrangements, not situation or us, was deliberate. She was already speaking the language of logistics, of endings, of past tense. Tuesday came and Sarah walked into their apartment. Her apartment, she reminded herself, since only her name was on the lease, with Jessica by her side for support. Marcus was there, looking like he hadn't slept, stubble on his face, his hair a mess. He started talking the moment she walked in, a waterfall of words about how worried he'd been, how she'd scared him, how they needed to communicate better. Sarah held up her hand and he stopped mid-sentence, something in her expression finally making him understand that this wasn't a normal fight. She told him calmly, coldly, that he had until the end of the week to move out. That she was done. That there was nothing to discuss. Marcus's face went through about 5 different emotions in as many seconds. Confusion, disbelief, anger, panic, and finally a kind of hollow understanding. He tried to argue, of course. He said she was overreacting, that he'd helped Emma as a friend, nothing more. He said one missed birthday wasn't worth throwing away 3 years. He demanded to know what had happened, what had changed, why she was being so dramatic. And this is the part that Sarah would later identify as her strongest moment. She looked at him and said, "Nothing happened. You showed me who you are, and I finally believed you. That's it. That's all the explanation you get." Marcus tried everything over the next few days. He called, he texted, he showed up at Jessica's building until Jessica threatened to call the police. He sent flowers to Sarah's work with notes begging for another chance. He reached out to her friends, her family, trying to get someone, anyone, to convince her she was making a mistake. He posted vague, sad quotes on social media that were clearly meant for her. He did everything except the one thing that might have made a difference, which was respect her decision and leave her alone. Each desperate attempt just confirmed what Sarah already knew, that Marcus was more concerned with not losing than with actually valuing what he'd had. He was in love with the idea of their relationship, with having someone who understood him, not with her as a person with her own needs and boundaries. 3 weeks after Sarah's birthday, she was settling into her new normal. She'd changed the locks on the apartment, which was her right as the sole leaseholder. She'd blocked Marcus on everything after he wouldn't stop trying to contact her. She was sleeping better than she had in months, which told her everything she needed to know about the relationship she'd left behind. She wasn't happy exactly, not yet, but she was at peace. There's a difference. Happiness is what you feel when things are good. Peace is what you feel when you're no longer betraying yourself. That's when she ran into Emma. Pure coincidence, in a coffee shop near Sarah's office. Emma was with a guy laughing, looking nothing like someone in the midst of a crisis. Sarah could have walked out, should have walked out, but something made her approach the table. The look on Emma's face when she recognized Sarah was priceless. Pure guilt mixed with defiance. Sarah didn't make a scene. She simply asked one question: "How's your crisis going?" The guy Emma was with looked confused. Emma went pale. And in that moment, Sarah knew. There had been no crisis. Or if there had been, it was the manufactured kind, the kind designed to test whether Marcus would come running. And he had. Sarah didn't need Emma to confirm it. The truth was written all over her face. Sarah thanked her for the clarity, turned around, and walked out. She didn't tell Marcus what she'd discovered. There was no point. Whether he'd been manipulated or was in on it didn't matter anymore. He'd made his choice and she'd made hers. Months passed. Sarah threw herself into the life she'd been neglecting while she was busy being understanding. She got promoted at work, started training for a half marathon, took a solo trip to Portugal that she'd been talking about for years, but never did because Marcus didn't like traveling without a detailed plan. She rediscovered parts of herself she'd forgotten existed. The version of her that was bold, that took risks, that didn't apologize for taking up space. She started dating again eventually, but with a completely different mindset. She wasn't looking for someone to complete her. She was already complete. She was looking for someone who would enhance her life, not expect her to shrink to fit into theirs. The last she heard, Marcus and Emma had tried dating after Sarah left. It lasted about 2 months before they both realized that the drama had been the actual relationship, and without it, they had nothing. Marcus apparently tried to reach out to Sarah after that breakup, sent her a long email about how he understood now, how he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, how she'd been the one all along. Sarah read it once, then deleted it. There was nothing in that email for her. It was Marcus processing his own regret, not genuinely understanding what he'd lost or why he'd lost it. She felt nothing reading it. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. That's how she knew she'd truly moved on. Indifference is the real opposite of love, not hate. Looking back, Sarah realized that Marcus spending her birthday with his ex wasn't the problem. It was the symptom. The real problem was years of small moments where she'd made herself smaller to make him more comfortable. Times she'd swallowed her disappointment to avoid conflict. Instances where she'd justified his behavior because calling it out would mean admitting she'd accepted less than she deserved. That birthday was just the moment where the universe decided she'd had enough and gave her perfect clarity. And her response, that calm, silent walk away, was the culmination of every time she'd been forced to be understanding when she should have been valued. The silence wasn't passive. It was the most active choice she'd ever made. It was her refusing to teach him how to treat her better, refusing to give him another chance to fail her, refusing to be the cool girl one more time. The beautiful thing about walking away without explanation, without drama, without giving someone the fight they're expecting, is that it leaves them with nothing to argue against. Marcus couldn't say she was emotional or irrational. He couldn't paint her as the crazy ex. All he could do was sit with the reality that she'd decided he wasn't worth her words, her time, or her energy. That kind of dismissal, that complete withdrawal of presence, is more devastating than any argument could ever be. Because it says clearly, you don't matter enough to fight for, you don't matter enough to hate, you just don't matter anymore. And for someone who took her for granted, who assumed she'd always be there, that silence was deafening. Sarah's story isn't unique, and that's actually the most powerful part. How many of us have stayed in situations where we were disrespected because we were afraid of being alone, afraid of starting over, afraid of admitting we'd invested time in the wrong person? How many of us have convinced ourselves that one more conversation, one more chance, one more attempt at making them understand would fix things? The truth is, when someone shows you they don't value you, believing them the first time saves you so much pain. Sarah wasted 3 years. Don't waste 3 more trying to fix what was already broken. The strength isn't in making the relationship work at all costs. The strength is in knowing when to fold, when to gather your dignity, and when to exit stage left without looking back. There's something incredibly powerful about choosing yourself, about deciding that your peace of mind, your self-respect, and your happiness are non-negotiable. It's not selfish, it's survival. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from someone who doesn't see your value. Because here's the truth that took Sarah years to learn: you cannot love someone into loving you properly. You cannot explain your worth to someone who refuses to see it. You cannot convince someone to choose you when they've already decided you're optional. All you can do is recognize your own value and refuse to settle for anyone who doesn't recognize it too. So if you're watching this and you're in a situation where someone is treating you like an option, where your needs are always secondary, where you find yourself constantly making excuses for behavior that hurts you, take a page from Sarah's book. Say nothing. Do everything. Make your exit strategy. And walk away with your head held high, knowing that someday, someone is going to be absolutely thrilled to spend every birthday with you. Not because you demanded it, but because they can't imagine being anywhere else. You deserve that. Don't settle for less. That's it for today's story, everyone. If this resonated with you, if you've ever had to make that hard choice to walk away from someone who wasn't treating you right, drop a comment below and share your experience. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you found value in this video, hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and helps us reach more people who need to hear these messages. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we've got so many more real stories coming your way. Stories about resilience, about growth, about choosing yourself. Remember, you're not alone in this journey, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that you deserve better and then go out and find it. Until next time, choose yourself, set your boundaries, and never apologize for walking away from anything that doesn't serve your highest good. Peace out, and I'll see you in the next one.